Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? New packs means new decks, but this time everything in this deck, in this pack, has been super expensive. It's either some crazy expensive engines, looking at you, old school, ancient, fairy, earth monsters that do crazy amount of stuff, but sadly are your ultra rares and super rares. It's been additions to deck, like the Gem-Knight stuff, like the Crystal Beast kind of stuff, which Crystal Beast is already crazy expensive by itself, so don't expect me to do anything with that one. Or it's stuff like G-Golem, which for some reason loads of the cards are ultra rares, like makes no sense, and that's already kind of more of an engine than an actual deck, so you'd have to still put some other stuff in it. So none of the stuff really worked out, but I saw the Gem-Knight cards and I was like, well, didn't we get this in the solo missions? Didn't we basically get a Gem-Knight structure deck for free? And yes, we did, and there's lots of cards in there that you don't have to craft anymore. We have Unexpected Die already, we have Gem-Knight Fusion already, we have lots of the Gem-Knight Fusions that nobody really plays because they're kind of garbage, but we still make it work. This is the deck profile if you don't want to be playing the FTK, or if you want to be trying out Gem-Knights and then switch to the FTK a bit later on maybe, and then this is where you might want to start. It has some stuff in it, like the Adamancipators that you don't technically have to play, but they're very good. And also with 5 of the, I think, 8 or 7 super rares that you have to craft for this deck, you already basically get like 5 cards of them are for like any kind of rock deck, very essential at the moment, because Researcher is like just like such a nice card in any kind of rock based deck. Same as Block Dragon, and obviously with it Gallant Granite, a card that's also very, very important. So if you don't want to run them, I understand, but if you feel like you want to run this package, then this will also be helpful in mega lifts, in like lots of different things that you can run that doesn't cost too much around this. Pure Adamancipators, of course, there's like a budget way to play them as well, and so on. So this is not a complete waste of money, even if in the end you don't really enjoy the Gem-Knights, but they are quite fun nowadays as well. Let's start with triple Gem-Knight Lapis. This card is very good for going into Lady Lapis Lazuli, the FTK enabler, and if you're new to Gem-Knights and you read this card and you're like, wait, but you can only special summon this card once per turn, so how is this an FTK? Well, usually you play stuff like Gem-Knight Master Diamond, Gem-Knight Lady Brilliant Diamond, can copy effects, can bring stuff back, and then the effect is not a hard once per turn, so you know where this is going. But we use this card for different purposes, and the purpose is mainly the send one Gem-Knight monster from your main deck or extra deck to the graveyard, which can either enable Crystal Rose technically, or if you send Lazuli, then you can get one of your normal monsters back, which then gives you more fusion material, and so on and so on. And that can be helpful if you lack certain monsters as well. If you want to go into a Link 4, for example, and then this card is a better extender than the other ones, and also burning your opponent for like 1,500 to 2,500, even if you go first, isn't technically too bad. And then if you do the next this thing again during the next turn, then it's a lot easier to finish off your opponent with certain other cards that you also have at your disposal. We decided to run, well, I decided to run Gem-Knight Garnet, Gem-Knight Garnet, and Gem-Knight Sapphire instead of Gem-Knight Tourmaline. Tourmaline is usually the better option because it makes Gem-Knight Prismora, I don't know, because this card can actually get rid of lots of stuff on your opponent's board. Well, not lots of, because it's a once per turn, but technically you could summon it multiple times per turn, which you don't want to, but you can even discard the fusion and then loop it back to your hand, so your discard actually doesn't really matter that much, because it just has to be a Gem-Knight card, and that is how you basically get rid of like annoying back row-y kind of stuff, floodgatey kind of stuff. But since you'd have to craft this card, I decided not to put it in. If you want to, you can just cut one of those two and then not go for some of the bad fusions or some of the worst fusions, and then splash in 1 or 2 Tourmaline, and then you can use that kind of combo instead. We run Garnet because we run Ruby. Ruby isn't terrible to actually finish off games, and especially if you want to incorporate a more pure kind of Gem-Knighty feel, then this card does quite a lot. It actually helped me win like 1 or 2 games in testing, so I felt like it does deserve its place. There will be monsters that are unaffected by stuff where you have to run over in battle, and then being able to tribute summon off like a 2,900 attack point monster and boosting this card up over 5,000 can be quite nice, and also double piercing damage is not too bad. Plus it doesn't restrict you that other cards can't attack, so this is just in general very, very nice against certain decks. That's why I decided to run that at least. There's ways for you to go into get into Garnet, so it's not terrible as well. A card that is probably not as good, but if you want to do some link shenanigans and whatnot, and if your opponent has a card that you otherwise can't get rid of, then Aquamarine can at least bounce it back to the hand, which some extra deck monsters that can be helpful in the combo. But yeah, this would be the Sapphire, and this would be probably the card to cut if you would rather go for the other stuff. Important, Lazuli adds you one of your normal monsters in your graveyard back if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect. So the whole discarding kind of stuff for cost doesn't work, but it is what it is. We have Crystal Rose, which is quite a nice card. Usually you would want to cut this down to 2. If you be running triple Gem-Knight Quartz, you can like get rid of one of this, get rid of one of this possibly. You could take out a double Parallel Z to run 3 of this as well. There's some kind of things that you can cut if you would run different things. If you, for example, decide to run Rescue Rabbit, you could cut one of this, and play like your Rescue Rabbits instead. Yeah, this card is in here because if you can send it to the graveyard by your fusion, if you have like a fusion spell and you have this card in hand, then this card can come back. This card can also trigger the effect of Lazuli from deck, which is quite nice. And yeah, it does stuff. It's okay. It's a light monster which can help for Seraphinite as well. It can bring itself back. So this is link material, especially if you go in first. That can make the difference between being able to use your Phantom Quartz to go into Appaloosa or not, because sometimes you will be missing some of the materials. So this can make the difference. That is why I run it at 3. You don't have to, but that's my reasoning for it, because funny enough, it's a rock monster, yay. Adamancipator Researcher, very, very fun card. This is somewhat of an extender as well, because if you have one Gem-Knight monster, and mainly what you want to be doing is go into Phantom Quartz and search stuff like Gem-Knight Fusion, because this is massive in this deck, and you only have this one, you can summon this and hope you get one other gem monster that then you can go into the link monster, and then you can still use this card to go into crazy stuff like Naturia Beast or Psyflame Lord Zeta with certain things. So yeah, this card does a lot of stuff for the deck, and yeah, you do want to have this card at least at 3. Sadly, you can't run it at more, but that is what it is. Brilliant Rose is in here at 3, usually also like more of a 2 of, but you kind of want to make sure that you can go into your link monster, and for this you kind of need to have 2 Gem-Knight monsters on board. If you don't run stuff like Rescue Rabbit, it can be quite hard sometimes to actually get the 2 gem monsters on board, and this card is always treated as a Gem-Knight card, so it works. And this card can be special summoned from your hand, but you lose out on resources and you have to discard a Gem-Knight card. So if you already have the Gem-Knight Fusion, it's not too bad. If you need to use this card so you can go into Quartz and actually search the Gem-Knight Fusion, then that's a bit annoying. It is what it is. Sometimes you have to make do with what it is, and the effect of sending one extra deck monster to the graveyard usually helps more with stuff like Master Diamond, but it also sets up Crystal Rose. If you have both of them in hand, then this effect can do stuff. Also, it fuels your graveyard with monsters to banish to get your Gem-Knight Fusion back to your hand, and technically also fuels your graveyard with fusion materials to be used by Phantom Quartz. So there's that. Gem-Knight Obsidian is kind of like a worse version than Gem-Knight Lazuli. This card really matters because it's a rock monster level 3, so it helps you go into your beast of Researcher, for example, and if you have it in hand and it's sent to the graveyard, then you can summon one of your monsters back. So you also kind of recur stuff, fusion materials, but this card also works from deck, so it's a bit better than just being able to search. I wish this was on field as well, at least, but it isn't, so there's that. One Ash Blossom because you basically get it for free, and if you want to be running this deck more go secondy, hand traps are basically key. Gem-Armadillo, actually not terrible cards these days, because it can actually go into Phantom Quartz, because it doesn't just want Gem-Knight monsters, they actually put the brains on, and 2 gem monsters are fine. So this card can technically search stuff like Brilliant Rose, and then you can still go into this one, so that is why there's triple Gem-Armadillo. Plus it's a rock monster level 4. Sadly it doesn't trigger on special summon, would be a lot better with a Researcher, but it is what it is. Gem-Knight Quartz, usually a card that you want to be playing at 3, but for the budget sense I cut it down to 1, and since we're not playing the FTK variant, and sometimes, or a lot of the time, you kind of want to go first, because go second decks on a budget are a bit annoying because you lack lots of the generic go second stuff and hand trap stuff. So this card's effect doesn't really come up going first. I mean, it does if you have it played at 3, because it has the nice effect that you can add one Gem-Knight monster back to your hand if this card is used as a fusion material, even banished as well for a fusion, so that's quite interesting. Not that it really comes up in this variant. You can add one Gem-Knight monster from your graveyard to your hand, not even like the other one that was used for the fusion, just any one, which is quite nice besides itself, but it is what it is. Would have been crazy if it was itself, then you could use it to fusion summon, add itself back, and then still use the effect that if you go second, for example, because this card can actually set one fusion continuous spell directly from your deck. Brilliant fusion. But yeah, if you have that 3, play that 3 because it does stuff with the deck. You can cut like one Brilliant Rose and one Crystal Rose maybe, for example. But it isn't as necessary. Usually there's like a combo if you play the FTK with like Black Garden and Rose Maiden in combination with the Researchers and stuff. Then you can go into Scatter Fusion. There's some crazy stuff. But for the budget variant, we did not want to go too deep into the whole kind of thing. And it is what it is. One Block Dragon because you can search it off of Gallant Granite. Crazy, and this deck is full of earth monsters, full of rock monsters, so this does a lot. Also helps you going into rank 8 in theory, so that's not too bad. It's protection. It's a crazy card. If for some reason you do not want to be playing this kind of package, there obviously you can actually get rid of this card. You can get rid of this card. And you could play like multiple Gem-Knight Quartz as well if that's what you got from the packs. Then like cut one of the Crystal Roses and you should be still fine. You can cut Granite then and just see how the deck goes. And if you want to raise the ceiling a bit, then you can still craft a Block Dragon. It is what it is. Like, you can obviously adjust the deck to your personal needs. Parallel Exceed helps a lot with Gallant Granite, but it also helps at least a little bit with Appaloosa. Technically, it's a bit annoying with this, but if you then go into Granite, then you get in other stuff. You can search stuff like Research as well if you don't want to be searching Block Dragon. So this card actually does a lot, because in the end, you do always want to go into Phantom Quartz. If you can't go into Phantom Quartz, then you've probably bricked anyway, and you can't really do all that much. Monster Reborn really helps because certain scenarios you need to bring back stuff from your graveyard. Another material on board is never too bad. And if you go in second, if you got rid of some of your opponent's stuff, that might be helpful as well from time to time. Triple Gem-Knight Fusion, this card you get for free as well. Very, very important. You can recycle it as many times as you want. If you keep banishing Gem-Knight stuff from your graveyard, then you can add this card back to your hand. So you will be using this effect like twice, thrice, even up to 4 times, 5 times. There's some crazy combos that you can do, not with this specific variant, but in Gem-Knights in general. So this is one of the main playmakers of the deck. Unexpected Die, just basically so you can get into Gem-Knight Quartz, because otherwise you have a hard time getting your gem monsters on board. One Brilliant Fusion, a card that you'd have to craft. They didn't give us for free, and this card might not be around for that long. I think in the TCG it's banned, and it is a very bannable card, let's be honest here. It doesn't lock you into Gem-Knights or anything. You just get a free monster basically as a second normal summon as well if you play it with Seraphinite. And yeah, it does loads of stuff, and since it is now even searchable, go in second, that being said, or some convoluted way, you have that as well. So this card is definitely one off in this specific variant. Forbidden Chalice, just the budget stuff for going first or second, and Infinite Permanence because you basically get it for free, and it does stuff going first or and second. One Seraphinite, you don't have to run this card, but there's lots of stuff you can do with it. It helps you go into Appaloosa turn 1. It helps you go into stuff like Zeta from time to time with Researcher, but you could still use Lazuli as level 5, so that's not too important. It's a fairy monster, so if you want to go into Lady Rose Diamond, then that is also something that you can consider. So this card isn't too bad, and the attack value for level 5 isn't too bad either, but if you fusion summon it, you usually can go into Zirconia as well. Already talked about this card. Burn damage, level 5, so helps with Zeta, send stuff to the graveyard. Very, very nice card. OTK Machine, very good. Very okay attack stats for the old Gem-Knights, and also helps you beating over unaffected cards, at least if they don't have too crazy attack points, because sadly the tribute is only once per turn. Would be mental if it was like as many monsters as you have, but it isn't. Aquamarine, you can bounce some stuff. The other effect really doesn't matter. This is the effect that matters when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard. You can target one card, turn it to the hand. You could also consider running Amethyst. It's somewhat good against back row decks, but it doesn't destroy, it just puts it back to the hand, which can help. more of a Duel Links kind of thing if you want to go for an OTK, I feel like, than in this specific meta. But if you feel like you need this, then go for it. So Konya, I run at 3, you can bump down to 2, but I feel like the attack value is so great, and you can use it with any rock type monster. So your Researcher, for example, also does stuff, so that's quite neat. And Gem-Knight Lady Rose Diamond, you don't have to play this card, you could also play Master Diamond instead, you could also play Lady Brilliant Diamond instead. It's mainly just in here because it was in the new pack, and in theory this card is quite good, but it has some major drawbacks. And well, first of all, the once per turn, the first time it would be destroyed, it isn't. I wish it was just like all the time you can't be destroyed by card effects or something like that. That would be interesting, but it isn't. You need a fairy monster for it, which is quite nice with Brilliant Fusion, because there's probably some kind of shenanigans that you can do with it, but besides that, not too crazy. And then the effect that you have to read twice during your turn when your opponent activates a monster effect would be absolutely amazing if it was during either player's turn, but it is not. It's not once per turn though, so you can technically use this as many times as you want, but how many times does that come up? Like, it has not really come up. So if you really don't want to use this card, and for some reason you just got some quartzes and some other stuff and you want to use that, and you didn't get this card in the packs, then you don't have to craft it. Try it out without it, and then at one point you could add it if you want to. It's not essential for the deck at all. Naturia Beast, a very, very good card, because you can do the Researcher combo plus Lapis plus Obsidian, and it does happen quite a few times. Like, it's not actually too hard to pull that off. If not, Zeta is in here. Obviously play any other level 7 Synchro that you have, that's a bit better than that one. Granite, already talked about it. Number 23, Lancelot, is a super rare that I just had, and it's not too bad because you can attack directly. This card isn't terrible going second and going first. This is what I was kind of looking for, because the extra deck is a bit tight, and this can be a nice rank 8. If you focus on going second, there's certain stuff like Dingirsu that you could run. Draglubion plus the Numeron Dragon combo is something you could be running. If you want to focus on the going first, Hope Harbinger might be a bit better, but sometimes that can collide with Naturia Beast, because technically then you don't need it. I think the Galaxy Eyes have some, or Photons have some card that you could be running. There's lots of like rank 8s that you could be playing instead. Phantom Quartz, a very, very important card. You technically want to be running this card at 2. Don't get me wrong, like, you don't have to, but it is a 2-off usually. It is definitely a 2-off. This card is very important for the deck. It is, you can only use each effect once per turn, so it is a hard once per turn, that one. But yeah, follow-up plays and stuff, this card at 2 is usually quite nice anyway. Appaloosa, just very good card going first. If you want to run any other kind of Link 4 stuff and whatnot, even Link 3 stuff, there's some Link combos that you can probably do. This is just the one that I had and the one that worked best for me, especially because it's a fairy monster, so if you use the effects you can still use it to actually go into Lady Rose Diamond. That's a bit of the thoughts behind it, but not that that actually really came up. For cards to consider, obviously Maxi is a card that's important. If you want to go down the very go secondy route, you can run to Analyzer just to bait out some of your opponent's stuff. If they think you play Adamancipator, that can be quite nice, and just to extend some plays. We obviously have stuff with these ones if you want to run them. There's like so many things you can do, especially because it's a fairy monster. So that works with Brilliant Fusion and whatnot. So this can be absolutely terrifying. But it is not going to be very, very cheap. This card is a card to mention. Obviously, if you want to go for the FTK, there's something. You could play Muddy Mud Dragon. It's technically possible, but wouldn't recommend. And yeah, you could technically play the Zombie Vampire because it mills, and then it triggers maybe the effects of some Lazulis and stuff. It does things. It's somewhat protected. There we go. Yeah, and Called by the Grave, obviously a very, 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 very strong card, because you might have already noticed if your Phantom Quartz does not go off, yeah, it's a bit annoying sometimes if you don't draw the Gem-Knight Fusion or get it, have any other way of getting that one. Smooth transition to a commented replay where I show you what this deck can do going first if it's completely uninterrupted, and how roundabout the combos look like. It's probably most of the time not going to be looking like this in your games, because your opponent will have some hand trap and then your turn will look very, very sad, but this is how this deck operates, at least going first. Going second, it's a bit of a different one. let's see what we do. We obviously use our combo and, well, not combo, our combo starter, unexpected die to get one of our monsters out. I decided to go for Lapis just because I knew I had a Researcher, and I thought if I don't hit another card that I can use, if I don't want to go into like crazy combos and whatnot, I still have the whole level 2 plus level 3 and then go into Naturia Beast. It's not perfect, but still have it. That's why I decided to do this. Technically, what you could have done as well is go for one of the level 4s and then hope that Researcher goes through and that Researcher hits another level 4. And if Researcher hits another level 4, then you could have gone into Gallant Granite, you could have gone into and then searched yourself Block Dragon and continued and continued and continued. But I decided to, that one was the safer option in case my opponent does have certain disruptions. And from that onwards, we're going for Researcher. We're trying to like bait out an Ash Blossom because I knew I still had Brilliant Rose in my hand. And with Brilliant Rose, I could discard my Gem-Knight Fusion to then still go into Phantom Quartz and then search other cards and continue my combos at that point. So I wasn't too sad about it. We want to get rid of your opponent's hand traps as much as possible. Here I had two options: go for the level 4 one again. I would have hit level 4, so technically I could have done the whole thing, but I decided Crystal Rose is a very good card in terms of what I can do. Now we use these two to already go into Naturia Beast, and that there's one very, very simple reason for this, and that one is that then I get Lapis into the graveyard, and with Lapis in the graveyard I can use the effect of Crystal Rose, send one Lazuli to the graveyard, activate the effect of Lazuli, get my Lapis back to my hand. Then I can discard my Brilliant Fusion and already have my Lazuli in the graveyard, so that's fine. I also use the effect of Brilliant Rose here to send one card to the graveyard so I can get my Crystal Rose effect off later to special summon it. I don't think I'll do it in the end, but just to have it in the end anyway. Then from here we go into Phantom Quartz because we had two gem monsters on board. Since we already have the fusion in our graveyard, I decided to search one of the two cards that kind of extend your plays. Quartz is a very nice card at that one. Also a fairy monster because that can come up as well. Now we banish the Crystallized Rose to get our Gem-Knight Fusion back. Use the Gem-Knight Fusion, that's where like the normal combo starts. We send to the graveyard our Lapis and our Quartz, and with Quartz we can do a thing that we can't do with any of the other cards, and that is get our Lazuli back to hand, which is very, very helpful because then we can do the whole thing again, and that is good because that actually gives us access to loads of plays. We did banish our Quartz here, we can still shuffle it into the deck, and I think we will in the end anyway, so that's quite good. And then we do the other spiel. The good thing comes into play here that we have another Researcher in hand, which usually isn't that good, but since it's a rock monster, we run triple Zirconia, we can actually use this to go into the other level 8. So it looks like we're kind of done, but we are very far from it. Lazuli gets our stuff back to our hand, and now we still have the effect of Phantom Quartz. We actually do on this now. Ooh, very nice. We go into Seraphinite, and then with Seraphinite we can normal summon Lapis, and from onwards go into an Appaloosa because we have 4 materials, which is amazing. We could have also summoned our Rose back from the graveyard and done that. That might have, in hindsight, might have been the better option if we just went for another Rose, because with Rose's effect we could have sent, I think we could have sent one other Lazuli and then got another card back to our hand, so we basically had a setup for the next turn then with our Gem-Knight Fusion, because we still would have had another Lapis in hand anyway at that point, so that would have worked somewhat around as well, but like this still isn't a bad end board. We go into our rank 8, the budget one, which isn't, it's not too great, but it does stuff. Yeah, we have Lancelot. Sadly, it is a forced activation, so you have to watch out that you don't negate your own stuff, so always get this one out last. So this is when it can hinder you a bit if your opponent actually doesn't deal with it. They don't deal with much. I'm already saying this, the opponent's deck was not very good at all, like not much of combo deck, nothing really happening. But this board was more about building this specific board. Now we see how it plays out, because there's some other kind of things that you can show off with this. Now we draw into another Gem-Knight, so we would have had a Gem-Knight Fusion plus 2 Gem-Knights in hand, so we could have comboed off. We attack here, and oh surprise, it's Gelen Duo, cannot be destroyed with battle. A bit annoying, but we can get rid of it with Lancelot. So we can't finish here, but yeah, technically you would have wanted to combo off here a bit more, but like I said, Lancelot kind of keeps you from doing that. So since you want to keep this negate up and you don't want to negate your own stuff at this point, because these traps could still have been stuff like Mirror Force or whatnot, and we don't really have anything against it, so I kind of wanted to feel out because they didn't do anything, so my board was still as strong as it was turn 1, and maybe just get rid of some of the resources while we're at it. Then they flip one of the cards that hurts this board the most, actually, because if they send a monster, and they do have one, then we actually can't do anything about it, because there is Naturia Beast can't do anything because you can't respond to it then, and Lancelot can't do anything about it, so that's a bit problematic. They go for the negate on Lancelot and Naturia Beast for some reason. Would have made more sense in my opinion to go for the Appaloosa negate. Who am I to judge, but that's what to me made more sense, because it's not like a permanent one. Now we activate the Crystal Rose effect to get Crystal Rose back from the graveyard, what we could have done last turn. This time we negate our own effect because we have to, but it's not that problematic. We still have one material for their turn, and then the game should be done anyway, so we can still combo off a bit more. Now we get our Crystal Rose back. Crystal Rose does the whole stuff that I said you could have done the last turn, sending Lazuli, getting Lapis back to hand. Now we're getting the fusion back from the graveyard because we still have tons of stuff in the graveyard. Also sent the fusion monster that was attached to it back. And with these two, we can now go into the FTK star, the very, very good cards that everybody wants to be playing. Lady Lapis Lazuli, we get another card back. And now we sadly ran out of cards in the extra deck that we could use, because we already went through our triple Zirconia. And sadly, we do not have options other than that. We can't really go into this one because we need a fairy monster, and the only one that we have is Appaloosa. If they negated Appaloosa, this would have been something at least worth considering. But like this, it isn't really technically Seraphonite. Well, it's not Miracle Fusion, so that doesn't really matter that much anyway. So we couldn't have really gone into anything in our extra deck because this is a special one, this is a special one, this can only be summoned once per turn. So there wasn't much more that we could have done at that point, but we had the materials to still do so. And I decided to send Granite to the graveyard just in case I get certain stuff back from the graveyard with the other Gem-Knight that special summon stuff from the graveyard, and then I can push for game the next turn. Technically, you could have already gone for the Lazuli effect and not sent Lazuli and just fusion summoned with this and gone into the red one at one point. Ruby, this could have finished easily with this one because you do double piercing damage, so that would have been nice, but we obviously had the whole problem with Droplet. We continue from here on, pop this card then, because we do damage. Funny enough, that came up, and now they're at 5,500. This is already a lot easier to get rid of in the future. We still have our boards, that is quite oppressive. They try to Raigeki it. We have so many ways of stopping this one, and from that point onwards, obviously, especially considering the deck they're playing, whatever it was, they don't have much they can do. It was some, I think it was some old school kind of variant of Spellcaster Light Sworn that they wanted to try out, but could have been any other monster, doesn't really matter because we have negates for days, at least 3 monster negates if they can't run over it. And yeah, that's about it. That's basically what happens. Then they surrender, but we would have been easily cleaning it up because I think we could have used the effect of Lapis Lazuli anyway again and then just ran them down. So I hope this shows kind of what the deck can do if uninterrupted. Imagine one interruption in this combo, you're kind of screwed, but this deck is obviously not very, very competitive. It has certain like power plays, but it's also very fragile for what it is. Hope you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, I hope you have a nice day.